Thank you so much, everyone, and welcome back. It's always lovely to connect with you. I really enjoy bringing you these messages, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for so many lovely notes that you've sent me. I read those notes. I take them into my heart, and it's just they're all deeply gratifying for me and motivating. And today I want to give something back to you. This video has been a long time in the making, and it follows up on a series that I did about 3 years ago. And today we're going to talk about evil and dark influences. Evil and dark influence. What is going on? What the heck is going on, and how you can take your life back today. This is a necessary. It's a necessary check-in. It's a necessary conversation, and I feel in my heart that a substantial number of people will receive the message. A vast number of people, and will really be set free on contact. I'm going to share some no holds barred information with you, and I'm going to give you some links. They're going to be found in the text below this video that are going to be very helpful. So again, I thank you for being an amazing subscriber. And if you're not subscribed, you're enjoying the content, please do so after you enjoy the video. So dark influences. I want to share that my information comes from a couple sources. Number one, and most importantly, firsthand experience. Secondly, my work and my own research. I'm going to take you back in time. This was a space and time I was in my early 20s, and as many people do in that time period, I was going through my period of finding myself. Had some questions about things. I had always, in my heart, believed in a higher power. That said, the difference between then and now is I could tell you then I was a believer. Now I'll tell you that I am a knower. Belief and knowing are two different things, and here's the distinction. If I had to draw a reference and talk about a symbol, I would say belief is more like the styrofoam, if you will. You can kind of pick at it, chip it a little bit. That's belief. Knowing is the granite stone or the diamond. I have been taken through a series of experiences brought on by myself that has led me into a space of knowing at this point in my life who God the Father really is. Back to my early 20s, just going through a period of really exploration, learning more about myself. And I remember just being at a time where I was praying, I was talking to God, and I just wanted to know for sure. And I can distinctly remember writing in my journal. And not only did I write in my journal, I verbalized this question slash prayer out loud. And I said, you know what, God, if there's a way that I can just be definitive and experience your reality, I want to experience your reality. If there's a way, I would like that. I would like that to happen. And it was just that innocent, and really just that matter of fact. And I thought about it after that, but I didn't think too much about it. And then 2 months later, I would say to you that all hell, literally, I can smile about it now, but there was nothing to smile about back then. Literally, all hell broke loose. I was taken through approximately a 10-year period where I saw things, heard things, experienced things, felt things that would be, I think, difficult for the average person to believe who had not gone through something similar. I'm not going to go into the innards the innards of that experience today. But in fall of 2019, I will have a book coming out. It's called Private Wars. I'm going to detail the journey there, as well as 10 people who had similar experiences and who are now experience the bliss and elevation of a lifted life. So I want you to understand where I'm coming from. I'm not just pulling stuff from thin air. This is really rooted in a deeply personal and now at this point in my life cherished experience. And my work, the underbelly of my work, is really about lifting people and helping to release people out of degradation. So, what are dark influences? What are dark influences? Let's not mix words here. I'm not going to make any bones about it. Dark influences, they really are heat seeking missiles. They are heat seeking missiles, you being the heat and the warmth, and they're the missile. And there's really only one goal, and that is to take you into darkness and degradation, the darkness and degradation that they are literally consumed by. They're consumed by it by their own choice. We all have free will. They are consumed into this energy by their own choice. You pick your word. You can call them demons, evil spirits, whatever you want. For the sake of this video and for my work in writing, I refer to them as dark influences. I add the influences on because it's precisely what that energy will do. There is a compelling force, an influence behind it that I'll talk a little bit more about later. So, in no short order, I want to explain how these dark influences operate. So, what are they? They literally are entities or forces without human bodies who desire in the strongest way to live out, to manifest their reality, of perversion, dysfunction, hate, and abuse. And what do they need? They need a human body because we are here on earth. This is a representation of manifested reality. This computer is a manifested reality. It manifested out of someone's mind. The chair that you may be sitting on is a manifested reality, the world of forms, if you will. So they do require and need human beings to live out this perversion, this lust, this darkness that is so prolific in them. And so, if you want to know, if you feel like you are afflicted, oppressed, battling this energy, and you want to know precisely what kind of entity or spirit, if you will, that you're dealing with, all you need to do is very simple and transparent. You get out a piece of paper, and you write out in what areas of your life do you feel conflicted? Is there a battle within? And what areas are those? And that's going to give you an idea of what kind of spirit you're dealing with. I'll give you an example. I went through this phase early on, again in my 20s. The best way I could describe it to you is I was tongue tied. I was tongue tied. What, Sheila, what do you mean tongue tied? There would be situations I was in, and literally inside of myself, I knew that what a person was saying, it was wrong. I disagreed with it, but there was such a spirit of passivity and being tongue-tied that I just wouldn't say anything. And I would know when it was going on, and I felt it after. Why didn't I say that? It was almost kind of like going whichever way the wind would blow. Later, I would come to understand that part of that spiritual attack was to break down my voice, so that would never be cultivated, so I wouldn't do this work that I'm doing right now. So that dark influence came against the very strength that I needed to cultivate, to grow, to do this work, to learn, to teach. And so you yourself, you can, this is not rocket science. You just write down, where's the area of conflict, strife, and that's going to give you some idea of what you're dealing with. And I'll tell you, the heavier the influence, the heavier the oppression from dark influences, the greater the destiny on the other side, the greater the destiny. There is something that you must cut through to get to that other side. Taking a little bit further into an explanation of how these influences operate. So you think about it yourself. If you were looking for a catalyst, a human being is a catalyst or a vehicle so that they could manifest their reality. If there's a spirit of perversion, he's going to look for a person, a human being, to live out this perversion. In whatever diabolical way that would take place. If there's a spirit who's a liar, a lying spirit, they're going to look for a lying tongue, someone's mouth, to generate these lies so they can live out that perverse experience. If it's a spirit of jealousy, they're going to look for someone to put that jealousy and hate, that influence, that dark influence of jealousy and hate, to live out that particular experience. So it's really not much more complicated than that. I sat with a man some years ago who was in prison, and he confided that he had done some very horrible things to women and children. And he says, Sheila, from where I'm sitting now, not only does it disgust me, but I can tell you that I was operating as a machine. I was literally operating as something of a machine. I accept full responsibility for what I did. But I look now and I can just barely, I've written my letters of apology because it was so filthy and disgusting. And I felt pulled. I felt very much pulled in that direction. There were times I knew what I was doing was wrong, but this overwhelming urge was so strong. Key into what he said, Sheila, I know that I am fully responsible for what happened. Let me tell you where his responsibility lies and lied. And let me tell you where mine, where yours, where everyone else. Yes, are the influences real? If you follow lines of logic and common sense, we can all deduce that yes, they are real, just as real as this table that I'm touching right now. Yet the responsibility, and this is what came out of his mouth, and I agree. He said, I had a responsibility. I had a responsibility my own, to mount a personal fight. I had a responsibility to stand up in the face of what I knew was wrong. I had a responsibility to learn and to grow and to get myself out of the circumstances. And you know what? I didn't do it. I didn't do it. That's why I'm sitting here today. This man's going to spend the rest of his life behind bars. And before don't be judgmental, because many people, they're free as a bird, but technically, spiritually, they are in bondage. So they're behind bars. It is each of our responsibility in this lifetime to stand up, to get some things in places for yourself, spiritually, physically, emotionally, to get yourself into balance and aligned. Many of you know that my company, the name is Rebalancing America and Beyond. That's not just a company, that's a movement. When you are walking in balance, there are pieces of your life that you are able to access, enjoy, and dark influences want to prevent. They want to prevent you from walking in that wholeness of life and balance. Now, Sheila, how do I know? How do I know if I am afflicted, if I'm being oppressed? Again, a tall tale sign. I think many people, if you're listening to this, you know in your heart if there's something going on. But a tall tale sign, and I'm going to point to Proverbs 15:13. Tall tale sign is that that kindness and that ease, that natural compassion, enjoying yourself, being kind to yourself, being kind to others. A tall tale sign is if that comes difficult for you, if there just seems to be a barrier between natural just decency, kindness, and elevation. And Proverbs 15:13 says, a cheerful countenance reflects a joyful heart and a joyful spirit. A cheerful countenance reflects a joyful heart and a spirit. And where there is sadness, the spirit is broken. The spirit is broken, folks. Where there is sadness, make no mistake, dark influences, they break the spirit. They break the spirit. And a broken spirit is an open gate. It is an open gate to degradation and dark influences, open gates of jealousy, greed, maliciousness. Dark influences operate through lies. They operate through lies and they operate through the force of urging a person to do things. I was sitting with a man in his late 30s not so long ago, and he said, Sheila, I've been running through women most of my life. My true desire is to just be married. I want to have a little boy. He had gone so far as to have a couple little baby outfits. He kept them tucked away in the back of his closet. It was his true heart's desire. And I asked, why is it that you can't do that? Because certainly, as you say, you're running through women. What's going on with it? He said, I just feel I'll meet a really good one who's just, I fall for her, she falls for me. And like clockwork, it's almost like I can hear something saying to me, go cheat. Just go cheat. You know who you are. This is not going to work for you. My father was a cheater. I grew up in a certain atmosphere, and it's just it's I feel like it's a part of me and who I am. And let me tell you something. Let me say something. He was operating in a lie, and he was compelled to do what he was doing. Even to him, he said, I scratch my head. It doesn't make any sense. It only makes sense when you put those dark influences into the equation. And I also have to say, if there's any doubt of what I'm saying, Sheila, how can you be so confident? Again, plain as the nose on your face, you will know the tree. You will know the tree. I will know the tree and have known the tree by the fruit it bears. When the divine, when the divine is involved, there is a gentle touch. You don't get a force like you're being bashed over the head. There's a gentle touch, a gentle breeze that feels good, and leads to good fruits. When it's the thugs of the spirit realm, you literally feel as though you are being bombarded. You feel like you're driving a car and someone has taken the wheel, and they're trying to steer it in their own direction. But where the divine is involved, there's always a consummate respect for your free will. There's a consummate respect, whichever way you want to go. You are here. To me, life itself is free will. That is life itself, is choice. So you have a choice, and there will be no one to bombard you, no one to bash over the head, no guns being held to your head. It is all up to you. Free will explains the degradation that we see, the shootings, the violence, the abuse. People are acting out of their free will. So I don't give anyone a get out of jail free card. You're acting out of your free will, and there is a choice, there are options. I want to turn you on to another resource. If you really want to take a really juicy, fruitful, deep dive into what is going on, I want to recommend the books. There are a number of them from Emanuel Swedenborg. Just amazing, gives you a beautiful deep dive. And there's a YouTube channel devoted to his work. It's called Off the Left Eye, OFF. Off the Left Eye. Just a beautiful, exquisite body of work that really reveals more about what is going on in this realm and what you can do to help yourself. I feel like the greatest tragedy, dark influences can take away a lot. They can take away time, they can take away joy, happiness. But the greatest tragedy is dark influences take away the one thing that you were here to do and experience, and that is the divine within you. To the journey back to the divine within is what they want to cut you off from. And I'll tell you, if you're here and haven't had the experience of pure enjoyment, not just of other people, not just of Tahiti or Hawaii or a beautiful painting, but I'm talking about smiling and validation and recognition of who and what you are, loving yourself, true self love, true self esteem is journeying to the divine and touching that place. That's what they will rob you of if you don't stay vigilant, if you don't stay alert, and if you don't have your practices and your plan put together. Folks, don't miss out on you. I want to share the playbook. I've given you some backdrop information on what they are, what's going on, but now I want to give you a playbook. This is the playbook that I used really to elevate my life to new limits, and it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart that people I've sat with over the years have paid tens of thousands of dollars, are going to these people on a promise to just be set free and elevate your life and come back into divine alignment. It breaks my heart because many people have been taken advantage of. And I'm going to tell you something, that the simple process, the simple process. And I say it's simple because the process is simple. It's the implementation and cutting through that muckety muck of those dark forces that can be cumbersome. But the process in and of itself is simple. And I'm going to share it with you in just a little bit. It involves prayer, spiritual hygiene, understanding what dark influences are, and separating yourself from that. And so, for these people who are taking advantage of innocent souls, I will say to you, how can you charge? How do you charge and soak people, who, and some of them coming don't have much already, for what God gives for free? That's what I'll give, something for everyone to think about. And so many of these elaborate steps that people take, when I tell you that through prayer, through focused living, and through spiritual hygiene, people set themselves free, but most importantly, through the divine, mighty hand of God. So I want you to think about that before you go running, giving your money and feeling desperate. You don't have to be desperate. You think God would make solutions ultra expensive and complicated? Not the God that I serve, not the one that I know. So let me come into the playbook with you. Number one is realizing, do not, here's a distinction, do not run from dark influences. Do not run from dark influences. Run toward God. Run toward the divine, because when you run, when there is fear, you enter a frenzied state. You enter a frenzied state, and dark influence will use that fear to serve as an oppressive force. It's very different. It's very different when you say, I now, my prayer time and moving toward God, it's not about fear and let me cover my head and let me run away. It's about running toward my God, my liberation, my emotional and spiritual freedom. It's a distinction. I would caution everyone against this frenzied, terrified type of energy, because it loops back. It loops back and it starts to become a form of oppression in and of itself. So make the distinction. I'm not running away from anything, because through the power and the strength of my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, I have all the tools. I have all the tools that I need, so I don't need to operate in fear. I'm going toward the refreshing waters, two very different vibrations. And secondly, make it a matter of fact. If you've watched my channel any amount of time, you know that I'm not here frenzied, running around, hitting Bibles on the table. I make it a matter of fact. I make my prayer time, my relationship with God, how I talk about it. It's like food and water. It's like food and water. I'm not making a production about it. Make things very matter of fact and keep a certain lightness. You can infuse a levity and oftentimes even a sense of humor, because where there is that heaviness, it becomes something else. And people say you can never get too much of a good thing. I disagree. I disagree. I know people who've gone so far to the extreme because they're just it's rooted in fear, it's rooted in terror, and that becomes something else. It's a form of oppression in and of itself. But whereas there's a lightness to it, and I understand there's a seriousness to what can be going on, it creates that air pocket, if you will, for more healing. I remember some years ago getting up in the middle of the night, and I knew there were shenanigans in terms of dark influences. I felt that. I felt that in my soul, and I felt that a physical presence. And I got up, I went to the refrigerator, and I just, first I laughed inside of myself, and then I laughed out loud and I said, you know what, you keep it up. It's just too late for this. I'm going to get some water, going back to bed. And I remember the freedom and redemption of, knowing, yes, there's a seriousness to it, but at the same time, I wasn't going to be a slave to that fear. And that's how you open up lots of pockets of healing, because truly, and I feel in my heart, when you're operating in fear, faith and fear, they don't coexist peacefully together. Because that fear is saying, I'm still living, I'm not trusting what's going on here. So that's what you have to keep in mind. Also, it's another personal declaration. I don't know if I believe if I'm protected or if I can break through. So I want you to consider that too. And number three is to pray very consistently, but letting go as well. What your prayer does, and I want you to understand that where dark influences are concerned, how does prayer feel to dark influences? Imagine yourself feeling intense, excruciating pain. That's what it feels like to them, except in the spirit realm. So it serves two purposes. Number one, dark influences hate it. It's kryptonite for them. And number two, it constantly realigns and renews your will and aligns it with the divine. Free will is what you have. So if you're not constantly renewing the contract through prayer, okay, well, maybe the contract is null and void. That's what prayer does. It's a constant renewal and refreshment. This is where I want to be. This is where I'm aligned. So it serves two purposes. And fourth, inside of that spiritual hygiene, the first thing you can do in terms of your spiritual hygiene, just like brushing your teeth, is letting go. Is actually letting go. If you are harboring hate and resentment, that's why you constantly hear people talk about forgiveness and not harboring hate and resentment. You are not, the vessel, the catalyst is not clear. So number one, spiritual hygiene is really starting to let go and release that hate and release that resentment. If that's hard for you, pray for the ability to do that. In terms of my physical hygiene spiritually, I enjoy burning mugwort incense. It's beautiful. It's a heavenly incense. The link for that is going to be on the information below. I love a couple times a week to take a purifying salt bath. You want to use rock salt for that. It's lovely. Let yourself air dry. And I love to keep a pink and a yellow candle burning as representation of love and friendship and caring compassion for all. So those are additional things to keep yourself in the physical realm cleansed and elevated. Fifth, it's being kind, being intentionally kind. I said before, God is present because he's present where there's a joyful, cheerful, relaxed, happy heart. And if that's not something that comes natural to you, pray. Pray for the wherewithal to start. If it needs to feel a certain way at first, let it, but everything is a muscle. So really being purposefully and intentionally kind and compassionate, and understanding when you see that ignorance and that belligerence coming from another direction, these people are suffering out here. You don't have to join with it. I'm not saying go out for a cheeseburger with them, slap their back. I'm saying understand that there are people suffering. More the reason to keep yourself elevated so you stay above the fray and you don't, get into the mud with them. And lastly, to stop looking for complicated and intricate solutions. The solutions are they're very transparent. They're easy. Where you may have some challenge that you have to break through is the implementation. Is the implementation. Everything I've said to you, the links you're going to find below, it's solid. It's solid. I don't bring you airy fairy stuff. This is my life's work. This is my body of work. This is how I spend my time researching this to bring you the highest quality. I only bring you the good stuff, the highest quality information, folks. And where dark influences are concerned, I say to the dark influences today, through the power of the Holy Spirit, I cancel you out, because guess what? This message was delivered, and I know whoever heard it, your heart is elevated. Go forth, implement, have an amazing life. I've got your back. There's more content coming, and I thank you so much. I'll see you next time.